In this series of videos, we'll look at how we elect the president in the United States. Now, the election of the president is a little different than the other methods we've talked about so far, but it does involve some of the same vocabulary. Let's use 2016 presidential election as an example. In that election, we had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as the two main candidates. There were multiple other candidates. I've just lumped them together as others. But what we can see here is that the popular vote, which would be individual people voting for president, Hillary Clinton got 65.9 million votes. That's about 48% of the votes. Donald Trump got 63.0 million, and then the other candidates got about 8.2 million. But as you can see, Hillary Clinton got more votes, 48% of the votes, compared with Donald Trump's 46%. So we would say that Hillary Clinton won a plurality. She did not win a majority, she won a plurality of the popular vote, because she won more than any other candidate, and but she didn't win more than 50%, so that's why we would not say a majority, we would say a plurality of the popular vote. Hillary Clinton, though, didn't win, because how presidential elections are decided in the United States is through what we call the Electoral College, the electoral vote. With electoral votes, which I have in the second part of the table, Hillary Clinton got 227, Donald Trump got 304, and other candidates got 7. That means that Donald Trump got 57% of the electoral vote. So Donald Trump won what would be known as a majority of the electoral vote. And in the Constitution, the President of the United States is elected by a majority of the Electoral College, or the electoral vote, not a majority or a plurality of the popular vote. It's specific to what we call the Electoral College. So in 2016, Donald Trump was elected president, even though in terms of individual votes of people out there, Hillary Clinton won more individual popular votes than Donald Trump. But Donald Trump won the majority of the Electoral College. So let's talk about this Electoral College. The Electoral College is a temporary group of 538 electors, or people, electors are just people, who vote to elect the president every 4 years. It is a temporary group because the group of people changes every 4 years. But it is 538 people who meet and vote for president. The Electoral College, the history of it is that it was something of a compromise between those people who were creating the U.S. Constitution in the 1700s. When I say those people, you might think of those people as the founders of the country. Keep in mind, though, that the founders of the country were overwhelmingly, in fact, all of them were basically white men. So the Constitution was written from their perspective. And there were some differences of opinion in how a lot of things were written and how a lot of things were created. And in particular, with how the president was elected, some voices were against a straight popular vote. And they cited that the ordinary citizen couldn't be fully informed about the candidates and that a populist president might command too much power. They were really worried about the ability of people out there who, like, we had in that point in time, lots of rural areas in the country, and not the best way of getting news out to people, that they might not be informed enough to actually vote for president. And then other people were said kind of the opposite. The other thing that was recommended by some was that Congress pick the president, but some voices very much against that, against Congress picking the president, because that was consolidating too much power within Congress. So a compromise was settled upon in which the individual states would appoint what we call electors to cast votes for president. So the states would appoint these electors that would meet and then cast votes for presidents. Now, each state, it was determined, gets the number of electors that is equal to the sum of the number of senators they have in Congress and the number of House representatives they have in Congress. Now, keep in mind that this is not saying the senators or the House representatives are the electors. It's saying that this is the number of electors they get. So one thing to remember here is that each state gets the same number of senators. Every state, like Washington, Oregon, California, all get 2 senators. But they get different numbers of representatives. And the number of representatives they get is based on their population. So Oregon, who has the least number of these 3 states, the least number of people in it, gets 6 representatives. That's a smaller number of representatives than the state of Washington, who has 7.7 million. They get 10 representatives. And California, which is much, much bigger, with 39.5 million people, gets 52 representatives. These, again, it's not the representatives and senators who make up the electors, it's these numbers we use. So Washington has 10 representatives and 2 senators, so they get 10 plus 2 or 12 electors that they send to vote for president. Oregon has 6 representatives and 2 senators, so they get 8 electors in the Electoral College. And California gets 52 plus 2 or 54 electors in the Electoral College when we vote for president. Now, there are, as I mentioned earlier, 538 electors in the Electoral College. So let's think about those senators and let's think about those representatives again. That means there are 100 electors that are based on the number of senators. Remember, 50 states, 2 senators per state, so that's why we get 100 electors. There are 435 electors that are based on the number of representatives. That's 535, but remember I said there's 538 electors. These remaining 3 electors actually do represent people that are not in any state. Those are people that represent Washington, D.C. Okay, now who does this leave out? Anyone who is voting from a U.S. territory. Okay, so U.S. territories include Puerto Rico, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and there are a few others, but anyone voting for president in any U.S. territory, so not in a state, not in Washington, D.C., these people vote, but they actually don't get represented in the Electoral College. So that does show you that there are some inadequacies right away in how the Electoral College is set up. And if you think about it, it was set up over 250 years ago in a very different scenario. I mean, things have changed a lot in 250 years. So, and this is just one place where the Electoral College is not representing all people in the United States. Now, how are the electors chosen for each state? Well, generally, prior to the election, each political party actually nominates individuals to serve as electors. In this way, each candidate has their own group of potential electors. And what happens is that after the election results within the state are determined, so you have the election and the state of Oregon, for instance, knows who has won the elector, that's going to determine which group represents the state. So each political party nominates electors, and then if that candidate from a particular party wins the election, then their group of electors is who's going to represent the state. Now, the thing about electors is I mentioned they are not senators or representatives. Specifically, it's defined in the Constitution that the electors cannot be any person who is a senator and who is a representative, because they wanted to keep Congress from making the decision of who was president. It also can't be anyone who holds an office of what we call trust or profit. So those would be people who hold high political office or high governmental office. So the idea here is to preserve that separation of powers by not letting members of Congress be electors. Now, the Electoral College and voting. Who do the electors vote for when they meet in the Electoral College to elect the president? Well, the electors, remember, are representing each of their state or in region in terms of like Washington, D.C. Most states require that the electors vote the same way. In particular, 48 of the 50 states, so overwhelmingly most states, require that all of their electors they send to the Electoral College vote for the candidate that won the popular vote in their state. So that's the popular vote in the state, not the popular vote for the country, because these electors are representing their state. So an elector representing, say, Oregon is required to vote in the Electoral College for whoever won the popular vote in Oregon. So that's how 48 of 50 states require their electors to vote. Now, that does leave out two states. Nebraska and Maine are a little different. They base their electoral votes on individual district votes in addition to statewide vote counts. So you can actually elect in Maine and Nebraska, their electoral votes can be split among different candidates. But we're going to concentrate on what most states do, though 48 out of 50 in the rest of the lesson. Now, electors must vote as their state directs. If they don't, they are free individual people, so they could go to the Electoral College and vote for whoever they want to, even though the state requires that they vote for who won the popular vote in their state. But if they don't vote for as their state directs, then they may be penalized by the state. So they may be fined, there may be jail time, but so there are consequences if electors don't vote for who their state is directed to.